think of boats, we think of fun. It's a thrill to ride a rubber raft down a fast-moving river, to speed across an open lake in a motorboat, to challenge the winds and waves of the ocean on a catamaran. But boats aren't just for play. They're also for work. More than 100 years ago, ships like this did the important job of moving goods from one country to another. They were driven by the wind and were called China clippers because they were the fastest ships on the seas and hauled tea from China. They also carried wool from Australia, cloth from England, and lumber from America. We don't use China clippers anymore, though they were once the pride of the seas. Today we know them mainly from pictures and models. But boats and ships still do the important work of moving goods. These barges are loaded with grain. The white boat pushing them is called a towboat. It can push groups of barges many times larger than itself. My father is a towboat captain on the Mississippi River. He's moved goods between Minneapolis and St. Louis for many years. Sometimes at night, when there aren't too many boats on the river, he lets me steer while he watches. Steering the boat is called piloting, and it's not an easy job. You have to navigate the boat through changing currents and shifting sandbanks. You must always be on the lookout for bridges and other boats. The trip down the river takes several days and nights. When the sun comes up, my father takes over the controls. Our towboat has 2 engines and 2 sets of rudders. Steering down the twisting, turning river is a lot more complicated than it would be on the open sea. While the captain pilots the boat, the chief engineer is down in the engine room, making sure the motors are working properly. As we travel down the river, we meet the Delta Queen. Boats like this were once used to haul cotton, grain, and other goods up and down the river. Today, the Delta Queen is a cruise ship. Like ocean liners, she carries passengers from port to port. Everything on the Delta Queen is steam-driven, from its musical calliope to its engines. Steam helps to power the giant paddle wheel at the stern or back of the boat. The invention of the steam engine was an important development in the history of water transportation. It meant that boats and ships could travel faster than they did with wind power. They did not have to depend on the wind to blow. At some places along the river, locks are needed to lower boats to a new water level. Most boats enter the locks under their own power, but some are pulled in by large wire cables. It takes a lot of teamwork to move a boat through the locks, and the crew members communicate by walkie-talkie. Each crew member wears a life preserver, just in case he takes a spill over the side. The Mississippi is an important part of America's vast network of inland waterways. It makes transportation to many parts of the country cheap and easy. On the Mississippi, boats carry goods all the way from Minnesota to New Orleans. There are no locks on the Mississippi south of St. Louis. Our part of the journey is over, and we head back up the river. On this part of the Mississippi, barges can be put together in larger groups. Our grain barges are now joined to others to make a group of 35 for the trip to New Orleans. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to move something when it's floating in the water? This towboat is now pushing 35 barges filled with grain. It would take a train almost 6 miles long to carry as much grain as these barges are hauling. On a barge, 1 gallon diesel fuel will move a ton of cargo more than 400 miles. That is why river transport is much more economical than trucks, railroads, or trains. When we see the International Trade Mart, we know we've arrived at the busy port of New Orleans. Here we see barges filled with coal being pushed by a towboat like ours. Goods from many parts of the world enter and leave New Orleans every day. There are boats and ships of many different shapes and sizes, and each one has a different job to do. Tugboats are ready to help push the large ships safely to the dock. Here, 3 towboats are joined together to push a heavy load of barges. The Coast Guard uses small motorboats and helicopters to patrol the harbor and keep all the traffic moving smoothly. The Coast Guard boat soon passes an incoming freighter from Finland. It is called the Patricia and has just unloaded its cargo. One way you can tell that a ship is empty is by seeing how high it rides in the water. If most of the water markings show, the ship is carrying a light load or nothing at all. On its top deck, the Patricia has 4 cranes. These cranes are used to load and unload freight. The Barbara Priam is another freighter. It's from England and is being loaded with piggyback containers that are stacked one on top of another. The loading goes fast. About 35 men can do the whole job in one day. The Barber Blue Sea Company owns many ships. The Almeria Lykes is a container ship. It carries most of its cargo in barges that are stacked up inside the hold. Towboats are used to pull the barges out of the hold. While ships are being unloaded in New Orleans, other ships in faraway places are taking on cargo. In the port of Valdez, Alaska, this tanker is picking up oil for shipment to San Francisco, California. It is a supertanker. It is the biggest type of ship in the world. It is more than 10 stories from its highest point, the bridge, to the bottom of the hull. On the ship's top side, there are living quarters for the crew members. They live on the ship for 2 months at a time. Lorraine, one of the ship's officers, uses her free time to study more about navigation. At work, Lorraine helps direct the loading of oil onto the ship. The oil is pumped through pipes. Large lights allow the work to continue day and night. When the work is done, the North Slope is ready to head out toward the open sea. Tugboats push it along until it is safely out of the harbor. Up on the bridge, Lorraine pilots the giant supertanker. As the third mate, one of her duties is to keep an eye on the weather, because she knows that stormy seas can destroy a ship, even one as big as this. When she sees that the waves are getting bigger, she knows there must be a storm nearby. The radio transmits a picture of the latest weather map. Lorraine uses the map to chart the course of the approaching storm. Meanwhile, the captain is writing reports and planning the work for the whole ship. As the storm comes closer, it blows white spray off the top of the water. Lorraine calls crew members in other parts of the ship, including the engine room. The engines give the ship the power to drive through the seas. The electricity to light the ship and make its computers work also comes from the engine room. It is here too that salt water is made into drinking water. On the bridge, Lorraine checks the ship's position against the map. She must know where the ship is and how fast it is moving. Satellites and computers also help navigate the ship. The storm is still getting worse. The giant supertanker bobs up and down like a cork. One of the officers directs the lifeboat drill. Each member of the crew, from the captain to the cook, must be prepared for an emergency. Lifeboats carry food, water, radios, and other things the crew might need. In lifeboats, the crew can survive several weeks on the ocean. A bad storm could knock out the modern computers, so the ship carries the tools sailors have used for hundreds of years. Clocks like this were used long before the age of computers, and they are still needed today. So are the magnetic compass and the sextant, an instrument which uses the sun to help pinpoint the ship's location. Radar helps to warn the crew of any obstacles in the North Slope's path, such as icebergs or oncoming ships. Although the old-fashioned ship's wheel survives from bygone days, it's much smaller than it used to be. This is because the giant supertanker has power steering. Ships have changed a lot since the days of the China clippers, but the work of boats and ships is still important, and sailing the oceans is still dangerous, because the sea is as unpredictable as ever. After hours of howling winds and crashing waves, the captain can see that the storm is ending and that all is clear ahead. Almost 5 days after leaving Alaska, the ship sails under the San Francisco Bay Bridge.